Hi, everybody. So good to be here and really appreciate this opportunity to talk about our perspective of Black Hat 2022, which we just came back from. This is really a busy week. We actually start out the week with some investor announcement within Trend Micro. We have this active investor value act that has taken a stake of 8.6% of our overall company, which our stock price spike up for about 12%. So that was highlight of the week. That actually kicked off the Black Hat 2022. And then soon after, we had additional good news conversation, a lot of activities going on, talking to prospects, talking to our clients, as well as talking to media, interviews, analysts, so on and so forth. So there was a lot of good positive energy going on at Black Hat. And today, Tim and I are going to just share our perspectives, some of the takeaways, as well as highlight some of the really focal point of the Black Hat 2022 with our XDR capability and something that's been talked about quite a bit at Black Hat. So starting out, my name is David Chow. I'm the Chief Technology Strategy Officer at Trend Micro. I started with the company back in January of 2022. And prior to this, I was working in the private industry as global SVP for a financial technology company. And prior to that, I was working 20 years as in the federal government. I started as an intern, but worked myself up to the deputy CIO, CISO, and the CIO level. My last position was actually at the Department of Housing and Urban Development, which I was the CIO there. Worked at White House, worked at financial industry, financial sector, financial regulators, transportation, energy, so you name it. But having a lot of experience, more from the practitioner side, more from the buyer perspective, and something that I do believe that I can share my past experience, my knowledge with you, and be able to share that, having to be called on 24/7, 365, and just having to worry about my network being compromised or something that's going on within my environment. So I'm very glad to be here, and then wanted to talk to you more about my experience as well as how I saw from Black Hat, and that could be applicable to safeguard your environment. And I'll turn it over to Tim.
Hi, thank you all for joining today. My name is Tim Miller. I'm a senior product manager over the XDR product here at Trend Micro. I have 20 plus years in cybersecurity, computers, networking, telecommunications. So I cut my teeth kind of in break fix, moved into IT operations and SOC before it was actually a thing. And funny enough, the first enterprise antivirus that I used was Trend Micro back in the day. It was still called PC-Cillin, so that takes us back quite a ways. I've got experience in architecting, building, supporting all these different components that go together, and specialize in XDR, digital forensics, and endpoint protection.
All right, Tim. Let's move on to the next slide. All right, so it's actually a really good segue that Tim talked about the past of Trend Micro. I think people know Trend Micro, known Trend Micro for a number of years. For those of you that haven't been familiar with Trend Micro, probably see Trend Micro as the antivirus software company that went on sale during Black Friday. You probably bought a copy of it. But then through the past 10, 15 years, the company actually progressed quite a bit through acquisition, through organic innovation, really grew leap and bound. And that's one of the reasons I chose to come to Trend Micro. I was heavily recruited by a number of companies, number of software companies, but I decided, I did my due diligence. I looked at the product line. I talked to the CEO, the COO, and really like what I see, especially with the XDR capability. And yet our competitor has repeatedly basically saying that Trend Micro is still this antiquated technology company, which I want to take some time to really dispute that here, using his own quote, or using their own quote. So this is from CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike to me is one of our main competitor, obviously, and they have grew leap and bound, and focusing on their endpoint protection, and almost solely on their endpoint protection. They have touted that they have a lot of innovation. And this is actually one of the interviews that was done at Black Hat. I was also interviewed by this person, Michael Norbison. And Michael, he basically covers a lot. He works directly for for a company that covers Black Hat. And he actually does a lot of interviews with the technology evangelists as well as company officers related to cybersecurity. And you can Google him and you'll see a lot of good information about his interview with a number of CTO, CIO, CEO in the cybersecurity realm. So this conversation was actually with the CTO of CrowdStrike. So essentially that CrowdStrike, if you really look at it, and based on the interview will actually point this out. CrowdStrike is trying to penetrate into the XDR capability without a true XDR component. They're known for their EDR, they're known for their cloud security somewhat, and yet they're looking to penetrate into the XDR. So they bought this company called Humio. But if you look at it, if you Google and also listen to the interview, Humio is essentially a log aggregator. They aggregate data, they provide the input into the Falcon component or Falcon sensor or the Falcon panel. And essentially that's not the XDR solution that anybody should be looking for. It's an EDR with a logged aggregator. That's bottom line. And also from the perspective of the CTO, and this is direct quote, Falcon data on Falcon sensor should work with third party, but that will obviously take time. So this is exactly quoted from the CTO of CrowdStrike, which means that there's something that everybody should be looking at in terms of how the data integration is being synced up properly, especially looking to have the visibility of the overall risk within the environment. And I think that's the main point that we want to drive today, that with Trend Micro XDR solution, we're providing the overall viewpoint of the cyber risks into your environment. You use our capability, XDR capability, that overlays on top of your current environment, your current network sensors, your endpoint protection. Doesn't have to be Trend Micro. It could be from our competitors. We actually have API integration that brings that data into our console so that you can manage through your policy and be able to, through a single pane of glass, manage through an automated way and enforce your security policy. So that's the biggest difference, and that's the whole notion of leveraging the XDR solution. And then moving on, the CTO is saying that cybersecurity is about trust, but during the interview, he doesn't really clarify that CrowdStrike doesn't really have XDR, right? He's essentially continuing to talk about EDR, adding log aggregation. And then lastly, when asked about, the CTO, what do you see in terms of your competitors in the market and the marketplace? So in a way that the CTO basically dismissed it, saying that, are there really true XDR capabilities? Just because there's a data integration from various vendors, does that really provide you the visibility that you need? As well as having the automation to resolve any security issues. The problem here is that the answer is yes. If you have a way to see into your environment, regardless whether you're using CrowdStrike, regardless whether you're using Trend Micro or Palo Alto, that's what the cyber professional wants to do. From my prior days as CISO as well as a CIO, I want to see the overall risk into cyber risk into my environment, everything within my IT environment, so that I can use my finite resources to prioritize what's critical and what's not critical to remediate. And obviously, I want to have automation. I want to have some sort of recommendation. What are ways that I need to make sure that my SOC they're operating much more efficient? Or if I don't have SOC, then my analysts are able to take the information and be able to resolve it much quicker, aligning to the organizational priorities. There are some organizations that focuses more on operational uptime. There are other organizations that focuses more on truly remediation on cybersecurity, especially on the critical and the high areas. So each organization is different, but I need to be able to have a solution, XDR solution, that can actually help me to see first the overall landscape, and second, be able to prioritize And third, address those vulnerabilities. So moving on, Tim. So here is the differentiation from our Vision One, Trend Micro Vision One XDR solution, right? So what I talked about was a comprehensive risk views into entire IT organization. So it's not just endpoint. It's not just an endpoint leading into your account management, leading into your network traffic. It's an overall viewpoint that actually a console that actually bring in all the data sets from your account management, from your identity access management, from your network, as well as from your endpoint, and having them to be able to correlate based on the events, based on your organizational security policy. And then when you configure your security policy, you're able to either automate that remediation or potentially set up red flags so that somebody can actually go in there to look at it. So in this situation, we need to do it efficiently. We need to do it cost effectively. So a third-party telemetry data integration with secure API is critical. So I'm not asking you to rip and replace everything that you have within your environment. If you're using our competitors' identity access management, that's fine. We integrate those data. We actually build out based on the schema table that's been provided by our competitors. If you have information coming over from different endpoints, different network, that's fine. We actually take those information through secure API and having everything correlated within our XDR solution and be able to give you the full picture, full risk view within the organization. Automated security response aligning to the Trend Micro threat intel as well as your organizational cybersecurity tolerance. So this is critical that we add our component. We do offer threat intel. We offer CIA, FBI, and Interpol. We leverage some of the best practices and we take that information and package it as part of our recommendation. You don't have to take our recommendation, but this is a way to show that we take the industry best practice, we apply that here as part of our overall product to help enhance the overall experience and create efficiency. But what's critical here is to make sure that we're aligning the overall product, the overall prioritization, the risk remediation, and to the risk tolerance of your organization. And this is critical because, like I said, not everybody is focusing on addressing each of the cyber issues. In some situation, some organization will be more tolerable to ensure that there's optimal or the highest operational uptime. There are organizations that focus purely on compliance. Then this is something that can be easily configured to make sure that's actually fitting to your organizational tolerance within those cyber risks. We do offer executive dashboard or a dashboard that's actually tailored towards the operational units. For example, SOC dashboard or IT operator dashboard. And those dashboard are actually it's meant to create efficiency to make sure that it's aligning to the needs of the components within the organization, as well as providing a clear communication, especially for CIOs, CISOs to be able to communicate upward to the board, knowing that what are some of the critical vulnerability or risks that need to be addressed. It's a single panel of glass console with full visibility and proper documentation. So if you get audited, you can actually take all of this information and be able to turn over to your auditor saying that we have repeatable process. Our staff actually remediate these vulnerability based on the documented procedure. And here's our log to show you that we're actually addressing that based on the standard and how that aligns to our organization. We also have great zero trust architecture integration. I know this is one of the buzzwords, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but this is a framework that we're pushing forward as well, because the framework actually helps to align organization to create this conversation about zero trust. And yet it should be focused more on the maturity aspect of the zero trust process. Rather than just fully buy into zero trust, we can actually help organization to start meeting some of the foundational zero trust objectives. And then we start to find ways to enhance the overall maturity of the zero trust model within each of the organization. So zero trust does take time, and especially coming from a former government executive, I can tell you that I tried to implement zero trust in my former organization, and I was able to get the bare minimum in place the more it takes, the more resources it takes. The higher it goes, the more resources it takes. And it does require a lot of organizational cultural shift. So this is something I'll talk about in a little bit. And then the bottom line, the last one is risk insight. It's actually given the perspective of your like organization, your like industry. What are some of the risk areas as well as the risk score in comparison, how your organization is comparing to other organizations?
David, before we move on to the next slide, I got a question for you. In your past life, what tools were on your wish list that didn't exist at the time that do now that could help you? Like that was some of the questions I got at Black Hat this year. So
yeah,
curious.
I would say, so obviously I'm XDR V1, but I'll start out with cloud security. So, and this is still the case within federal government. The cloud aspect in most government is using Azure, Microsoft Azure, simply because everybody's using Office initially, and then they transition to Office 365. And it's just easier and natural to transition into Azure. But AWS has really made a strong push, and AWS has actually made a huge footprint within. I mean, they still lagging way behind Microsoft, but I would say they were able to gain about 30% of the ground from Microsoft. Google is it's not a strong player. They haven't really focused much within the government space. But I mean, if you look at it overall, there hasn't been a focus on creating the proper discipline on governing cloud resources, for one, and second, securing the cloud resources. Yes, even when I was a CIO, my organization, we go through our security assessments before we launch our product, our system products or application products. We go through authorization to operate, including code review, including security assessments. But a lot of the time that we do not focus as much on after the product has been deployed, what would be the mechanism to manage as well as having the necessary oversight to secure the cloud environment. And that remains to be the same situation, same problem. If you Google just Inspector General reports, Inspector General essentially is a third-party entity, a government entity for each of the departments that they actually inspect each government's operation practices and people. And they also do that for IT. So each year they go through the FISMA audit. And within IT, you'll see that there has been a lot of findings related to cloud security. So that's one area, which, in a way that I know we're not talking about cloud security here, but it has been something that Trend Micro has focused on in the past years. And we just recently made this really tremendous news release about integration of cloud conformity, the cloud governance and security aspect from our cloud product into the visibility of our XDR solution. So that's something that you want to have. I talked about single pane of glass. You want to be able to operate everything within that single pane of glass. So which is leading to the other aspect of, I wish that I had XDR solution. I mean, we're using Palo Alto for our network traffic. We're using Splunk, right, for data aggregation, or at least to gather data. But we lack that component of being able to have an efficient way to make sense of the data, as well as taking the necessary action, and to have the full visibility into the overall environment, integrating all aspects of my IT environment. So in this situation, XDR is that perfect example of something that I wish I had in the past, but I didn't have. And that's one of the main reasons that I come to Trend Micro.
Yeah, for sure. And another question I get a lot of is, as a CISO, their job is to help identify risk and make sure they put mitigations in place before it becomes an issue. Are there any tools that you heard about at Black Hat, or maybe about that you can drive people towards?
Yeah, so in the past, this component has been managed a little differently. So, and obviously, I'm speaking hugely from the government's government standpoint, and even in the private industry I was working at, it doesn't quite, the maturity wasn't quite there. So so in the past, I was using this tool, this Archer tool. It's a GRC, a governance compliance and risk component, where all the data will actually feed into that tool. And then my analysts will need to be able to make sense out of those information, coordinating with amongst different components, the NOC, the physical security, as well as the operation, the data center operations, as well as the security specialists, to be able to make sense out of exactly what action needs to be taken if there is some sort of a breach, or if there is some sort of a security incident. So I know ServiceNow has been focusing quite a bit on that in terms of replacing Archer, because Archer is super complex. RSA Archer it's very difficult to use, but it hasn't gotten to the point that it's fully integrated with a component like XDR component. So I know that, you know, in my world tour back in the summertime and talking to the Singapore government, they were actually thinking about potentially combining our XDR solution, having a ServiceNow module to feeding information directly, direct API directly into our components, and vice versa, so that everything is captured within one area or one bucket of areas. So if there's any security incidents that needs to be documented through the governance compliance process, it gets routed into the XDR. XDR can actually serve as a conduit to resolve the issues. But while resolving the issues, there is a lot of collaboration that's needed. For example, NOC. I mean, potentially the person's credential needs to be deactivated because of, as part of their maybe part of the zero trust or part of their security remediation. Then what could happen is that we could use XDR to actually trigger that event, or potentially that having that information fed back to ServiceNow component, a different module, a true service type or service desk module, to be able to trigger that action and then document the necessary action. So this is more of a government bureaucracy where everything gets audited, but at the same time that there has been, the component has been somewhat, there hasn't been a widely adoption of this type of thinking. So there is not a lot of tools out there that can actually, you know, function, having some sort of automated function to be able to, you know, collaborate amongst different entities and be able to trigger those actions to solve those, to remediate those security risks.
Great, thank you.
All right, so moving on. So these are some other conversation that we had at Black Hat. So one is obviously, you know, what is the Trend Micro near-term objectives? I know that, you know, some people may not be familiar with Trend Micro. Some people are very familiar with Trend Micro. But the bottom line is that the company has been in existence for the past 30 years. It has transitioned hugely, leap and bound hugely from initially antivirus software to start in 2010 that the company really start moving to more of innovation of enterprise cybersecurity solution through acquisition, through internal innovation, organic innovation, and really grew to the point that it's actually one of the top 5 cybersecurity company in the world. And there's a huge global presence as well. It's not just within the US, within the Americas, but there's huge global presence within Asia as well as within Europe. So what we're looking to do here is we're really looking to bring that understanding and helping to change that market perception. We're actually establishing public and private sector advisory board. We're in the works of the private sector advisory board in terms of, you know, bringing in some of the seasoned executives, the CIO level, the CISO level from our current clients, as well as from clients that we haven't had a lot of engagement from various industry, financial industry, healthcare industry, critical infrastructure, to make sure that we're gaining their perspectives to be able to help influence the market and shape out and show people that, you know, who Trend Micro's are and what do we do? I mean, what are some of the products that we have that we're so proud of? So that's where we're focusing on private sector area, and we're looking to have that in place within the next quarter by end of fourth quarter. The other one is actually a public sector advisory board. And obviously, I have a lot of connection. I'm leveraging that. We have actually established that. I spoke to 6 CIO, CTO, senior executive level within the U.S. federal government. We had dinner last week, and they're very interested. They're actually they're going to be part of our advisory board, and we'll have a notionally that we'll have that news release on September 27th, and you'll know who they are. And they're actually spanning across industries like transportation industry, energy industry, as well as Department of Defense. So there's just a lot of different areas that we're looking to create this, not only the synergies between the boards, but be able to help educate the public that we have some heavy hitters, CIO CISOs that can actually be our advocate, right? Be our evangelist, be able to speak for Trend Micro, as well as share their experience on Trend Micro capabilities. We're looking to continue to create innovation, especially through our XDR and cloud security. I talked about the cloud conformity as something that we released the latest. We're actually positioned very high, and this is actually getting into some of the later bullets. We're positioned as one of the top 3 by Forrester in both cloud security and XDR. And this is something that we're continuing to innovate. We're continuing to invest a lot of research into making sure that we're gaining the full visibility into an IT environment, but then have an automated way to help resolve those, to remediate these vulnerabilities. And then lastly here, just to continue to elevate our competitive advantage over others, but really providing the full view of what we do, and then really drive the industry to make sure that people see us, including our threat intel capability, including some of the services that we're looking to provide to make sure that people are able to use our package, use our capability to the full advantage. Tim and I actually talked to one of our clients, and they have their cybersecurity outsourced over to India. And one of the major issues is that, yes, they purchased capability from us, but because of the high turnover within India workforce, within the SOC, how would they be able to keep up not only for a proper implementation of XDR, but also how would they be able to train up their staff so that they can take full advantage of that XDR, our Vision One solution. And this is something that Tim actually does on a monthly basis to make sure that he's helping to provide the educational process and be able to help people to realize the value of XDR, of the stuff that people are purchasing, but at the same time that it's really using that to help prioritize the resources so that we're addressing the critical needs within the cybersecurity threat within the organization. But Tim, do you want to just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I definitely understand and realize that we are moving pretty fast inside of Vision One, our platform. And that has both good and bad side effects. One of the bad is that sometimes it's hard to keep up with all the innovation that's coming out and get educated on it. So I have this monthly call with our C-band customers, and I walk them through what's new inside of Vision One, and I show them how this will help them in their organization to save time, to get resolution more quickly. And just as an example of that, for those who may have not used the product in the past, when I first started sharing, there was a customer that is using our cloud app security for their Office 365 for their email, and they weren't aware that we had response techniques within Vision One that would automatically go through and respond to incidents in mailboxes. They thought they could identify them in Vision One, but still had to go back to Office 365 to mitigate. So you can actually quarantine or delete emails right out of inboxes without having to go into each individual inbox. And his revolution was like, wow, that could save me 30 minutes, depending on what's going on, trying to find the user, trying to find all the emails associated with it and delete them. I could just do that all here in one fell swoop. But that had been there for for a few months before he even realized it was there when I showed it to him. And so that's what kind of sparked the whole thing. So we want to keep it in front of our customers so they know what's changing month to month. And we're also working on other components within the console that will help you walk through different components as they're released. So Vision One is great in that we don't keep new features from our customers. As new features are rolled out, we allow customers to preview them and try them out and tell us what they think, so we can be good security partners with them. And if there's something doesn't make sense, or if there's some things that they would like to see different, they can report that back to me in those meetings or through their sales team. And we add that back in, right? We take that feedback and we add it in where it makes sense. So we're always listening. We've got feedback requests built right into the platform as well. And we're working on other ways to help keep your analysts and your CISOs and board up to date with what can be done with the platform. So working on that and keeping up with it on a bi-weekly and monthly basis for those meetings.
Yep, that's the commitment from our CEO Eva Chen, basically, and she wants to make sure that not only that we're helping to resolve and remediate any cyber threats, but also providing the quality service, having the greatest customer experience. And that's something that we're striving for. And obviously that trickled down to the, to our level, to the staff level, to make sure that we're able to help our clients to be able to meet their objectives. So moving on, and I'll just go very quickly because Tim actually has things that he wants to show you. So with Zero Trust, so this is one of the obviously buzzword. This has been pushed quite a bit by the current administration. President Biden really elevated this conversation, the focus on cybersecurity, using current events, using the ransomware, using the Russian cyber attacks, and then be able to really elevate the mindset of cybersecurity posture, especially within corporations. So and obviously me coming from government in the past, this is something that I'm very familiar with. And I can talk a whole hour about this. I can exchange ideas. I would love to. If you're interested, definitely hit me up. I would talk to you more about my experience and how I can share that and how we can really help you. But the bottom line is that there are some good concepts within Zero Trust. In order to fully embrace Zero Trust and grow to the maturity level, it's going to be super costly. I mean, you're talking about not giving anybody any trust within your environment. It's almost like you're operating in a skiff or in a secure environment where nobody's trusted, and it's like everything that you have is national intelligence. Most corporations are not like that. So I would just advise that in this situation, really understand your organizational tolerance on cybersecurity risks, and then potentially leverage the nuggets that's coming out from Zero Trust architecture. Focus on maturing the areas, building the foundational level. And we talked about the 5 pillars, and we talked about having the proper monitoring, multi-factor authentication from account access perspective, having a network oversight, having ways to be able to provide trainings, and also overhaul your staff's expertise within cybersecurity. So a lot of the topics here within Zero Trust it's actually sound fundamental cybersecurity hygiene practice, and a good practice and good hygienes. So this is something that it's definitely it will stay around. But obviously, I would just caution that just don't go overboard. Within our XDR solution, we actually do have capability through the XDR console to help manage some of the Zero Trust objectives. So for example, we're talking about account access management. So within our XDR console, we're able to identify where this person is logging in from, and as well as whether this person has the right credential to access the right data. And with machine learning, we're able to give warnings if this person is logged in. So for example, I work in Washington, D.C. area. So I've been working here for the past 6 months, and all of a sudden I went overseas. I took a business trip over to Singapore. I started logging in from Singapore. And the moment that I log on from Singapore, our XDR solution can actually pick that information up and trigger alert. So we can actually program to be a hard stop, uh, hard disable, or we can configure so that it could be a trigger event that potentially a follow-up would be needed. So that's just one very primitive example of zero trust concept that we're putting into our XDR environment. But then it certainly helps to protect and enhance the overall security posture within any environment. So again, I mean, I would love to talk more about this, but I want to make sure that we're saving ample time for Tim to provide a demo, as well as to talk through more about the API integration, as well as the positive of work efficiency from the XDR solution. So Tim?
Sounds good. Before I get into the demo, which you may or may not have experience with, there was a question where there was a request, how can they get invited to these meetings? I'd ask that you go through your sales team and let them know that you would like to be added to the What's New with Vision One, in Vision One with Tim Miller meetings, and they can reach out to us internally and we'll get you added onto the list. That's a list that's curated and updated regularly so that we're not spamming people who don't want to be there. So that's the quickest and easiest way for me to be able to help you with that. So yeah, we're in Vision One, and if you haven't been in it for a couple of weeks, it may look a little bit different, and maybe not. But just for example, this cloud assets, this just came out very recently, this week. So again, we allow our customers to take and use new tools as they're being developed. All of this stuff is generally available and free for use. So if you've got access to Vision One and you've got your sensors feeding in, you can get access to this. So what we're doing here, this is what we call our executive dashboard. And when I was asking the question of David earlier, like what kinds of things do you wish you could have? And the reason why I asked that is because some of the CISOs that I talked to at Black Hat were like trying to identify risk. How can I identify risk in my organization before it becomes a problem? And this risk index is one great way for the CISO to take a look and identify what's happening in their organization. They can take a look at it from an attack surface point of view. They can take a look at it from assets, from accounts, if they have internet-facing assets, web servers, etc., and cloud assets. So we're breaking it down to multiple levels. Oh, that needs to time out here a second. Okay, breaking it down on multiple levels so that the CISO can kind of get that high overarching view. They don't need to get super technical with it, but if they identify something, they see this as trending upwards instead of downwards, they can take that back to their team, right? And this risk factor, this risk index that we have here is based on a 100 score. So there is detail here. We look at a lot of things that are coming in, and it's all dynamic. So this can change during the day as you're resolving things. So we're taking a look at your risk index over time, but we can also take and compare you with other organizations of your same type. So we take a little bit of information when you join up with Vision One. We ask what area, what field you're in, what company size you are, and we know what location you're in because you registered for Vision One in a specific location. So if I wanted to compare myself with the regional average, I can add that line. So across the regional average, I am typically overly risky compared to the regional average. Why is that? Well, that's because this is my lab and I'm doing things risky on purpose. But maybe we want to do it based on industry. There's no one in my industry, but if this were like healthcare or something like that, I could see how I rank up against healthcare. And then company size as well, right? So this is based off of the number of endpoints that I have reporting in users. So based off of all those different metrics, I can see where I fall compared to others in my industry, of my company size, and within my region.
So I think that's very important because for a CISO to be able to communicate to the board will probably try to find out, within our industry, within our vertical, what are some other people doing? I mean, what are their risk score, right? So if if the CIO CISO is able to showcase this capability or provide a report based on this, they can easily leverage it to justify additional resources, saying, "Hey, we're at a higher risk in comparison to our peers. Perhaps we need to find ways to shore up on areas that poses the high risks." So, Tim, is there a way to identify the high risk area? Let's say if when you're scrolling, does it tell you which are some of the area that actually show you the highest risk areas?
Yeah, so we do have the risk factors here. And so we're highlighting and identifying there's 238 highly exploitable CVEs detected in an environment. And when I click on that, it's going to come down and show me a chart based on what the global average is and my organization. So you can see, again, I'm outweighing the organization. If I want to go in and grab details on that, again, this is all coming out of the executive dashboard. I can go in and I can see all the CVEs that my organization is susceptible to, the number of devices that are susceptible to it, the number of trend prevention rules that are available to be used to help mitigate that before the patching is done, and then if there were any exploit attempts against that. So you can see already that if these 8 endpoints are unpatched, are not using trend prevention rules, that there's 10 exploit attempts against this, I could already be breached. So you can really grab that and really dive in and see what you need to concentrate on. So let's just click on that a little bit deeper. I can get details on the CVE. So coming down here, I have a knowledge base of the different operating systems and patching that I need to apply. I can also grab information on the CVE and what it all entails. Up here, we can see the rules and the rules and the protections that are available from Trend. So if you have these products listed, Cloud One, Apex One, Cloud One Network Security, a tipping point, you could click on these and identify which rules can be in place or should be in place to make sure that you're protecting your environment until you patch. We'll go back and identify those devices. We have a separate tab for that. And you can see here the 13 devices that I need to concentrate on, and I can get my organization to take a look at that right away, right? So it gives that quick view. It's a quick drill down. You don't really have to do any hunting. All the information is presented for you here and is easy to digest.
So to say if I was a CIO or CISO for this organization, I need to be able to quickly identify my weakest pain points or areas, weakest link, and start going through analysis, perhaps developing plan of my action and milestone to address those areas. So I can easily take this concept and take the area where I'm the most vulnerable, developing a remediation plan to document that, right? In a way, yes, it's a CYA, but the bottom line is that to get that to the point, to start getting people to pay attention to addressing those issues. Once those issues are addressed, then I'm resolving my highest vulnerability. And then I can rinse and repeat for the next levels, to the point that I have a much better hygiene within my environment, as well as a much better cybersecurity practice environment.
Yeah, and talking about hygiene, there's a good point I want to bring us back to on this main page. If I come up to my security configurations, I can see if I've got Trend Micro Cloud One and or Apex One as a service linked with my Vision One, I can see what my policies look like. So talking back to that hygiene, am I using best practices here? Well, agent self-protection is not enabled on any of my 8 policies for Cloud One workload security. And that would be a red flag for sure that no, I'm not using best practices in my environment. And this is another way you can get your staff to take a look at what's happening and get that resolved right away. How come I'm not using agent self-protection here? That's an obvious thing that should be enabled so that threat actors can't get in and disable your antivirus and do whatever they want, right? So some low-hanging fruit kind of things. But what if we want to take a look at at my attack surface overall, right? So again, identifying risk. We take a look across the board here. We've had 12 different devices coming in, and then in July we see an uptick, and then in August we see another one. So assess devices, no managed agents. 214 devices showed up on my network that don't have any managed Trend Micro agents on them. So that doesn't mean you're not protecting them with something else, but that's a big uptick. And why do I have that many all of a sudden, right? So that's a flag indicator of your attack surface, how it grows. It stayed stable all this time, and then all of a sudden we're growing. Did we add a new office location? Have we just not onboarded them yet? Or what's going on in my environment, right? And we can see the different sources that contribute to this. And there's quite a few, right? We got the Vision One agent, network sensor, Apex One, Cloud One, mobile security, zero trust, tipping point, right? There's several different ways that we can pull information in here to help you identify that. But then also we see a device list here with a risk score also associated with it. So this is my riskiest device in my environment, and I want to know why. I got 205 highly exploitable CVEs on the endpoint. So this, again, we can dive down into that and really get a look at what's happening in that environment. So we kind of look at it from a high overall view, but if we want to look at it from a day-to-day operations point of view, let's come down into the operations dashboard real quick. And this is showing the similar data, actually it's almost exactly the same as what we're seeing in the executive summary. But we're going to allow you to get a little bit more technical about what's going on in here and get more down into the nitty-gritty. So you can come in and see your vulnerabilities over time, and you can get the same details here, but you don't have to go into it through the executive dashboard. You can get it from an operational point of view, and you can see more of what's happening that you need to concentrate on. So you don't have to wait for that alert to come in from the executive dashboard. Excessive suspicious Windows login attempt, for example, looks like a brute force attack. We're calling out these items and bubbling up to the top so you can dedicate the resources and the time to go into those. And then to help with automating all this, we have added security playbooks. So security playbooks have been around for a little while in our product. They have manual and scheduled delivery processes coming out here very, very soon. We will have fully automated scheduled, fully automated playbooks for you to use. So you can use these to isolate endpoints, mitigate risk, collect data from those endpoints, right? Whatever executions you want to perform when an event comes in, we're giving you that capability in product as well. And this is another one that I get asked a lot about, right? Customers have a SOAR vendor, but it's a little bit kludgy, or it's hard to integrate with their current process. They want something where they can just come in and look in one place, set everything up, train their people on just one product, and get everything in and out, and have all that visibility in one place so they can get it all taken care of. And this is what we're trying to do by adding these components in for our customers. All right. So David, I know we have like 10 minutes left, and there were some questions in the chat. Did you see anything that we can address?
Yeah. Do you want to show the API integration, some of the vendors that we're integrating with?
Yeah. So I'll just come into the third-party integrations here real quick, and then I'll show you the API dashboard. So we have quite a few, right? We do integrate with SIMs, SOARs, and different vendors, as you can see on this list. But specifically, we get a lot of requests for different SIMs. So we do have QRadar, we have syslog connectors, we have Splunk integrations as well, right? So if I click on SIM, it's automatically going to bring it down. So we got Azure Sentinel in here, ServiceNow ticketing that David spoke about before. So you can automatically send data back and forth from ServiceNow, Vision One Splunk, and again, our syslog connectors. We've also added a stick shifter connector. So with more products moving to a stick shifter type communication, we're also adding that in as well to help get that integrations across. We'll come off of that. Let's go into firewall and network protection. So we do have sharing of information between checkpoint firewalls, FortiGate, Palo Alto. There's also a plain text feed for other vendors and Proxy SG. So, and we're adding to this on a regular basis. So as customers request different integrations, we're adding them, but we're also working on several others because we have to work with the providing vendor to get those added. Sometimes it takes a little longer than we would like to, but it is a partnership where we work together with those vendors to make sure the products talk and work appropriately with each other. And then inside of Vision One, we have the API automation center. And so we have automation guides in here. So your team can come in and take a look at how they can get things set up and talking between Vision One and the other products that you are communicating with. And if we come into like the cookbook here real quick, we can show you how we can communicate. And then if we go into the reference, we're now in version 3. We will be deprecating version 1 here in November, I believe. But we come down and see what we want to take a look at. If we want to look at workbenches, bring you in, you can take a look. We got Python examples in here. We can show you what we need to do to grab the appropriate information to fill out your SIMs or SOARs or whatever you're pulling that information down for, right? And so this is very simple. It walks you through the different things that you can do within the product, but we're always adding to it. We've got a team dedicated just to third-party integrations and APIs to make that number one priority, really. Once a new product is designed and rolled out, getting these integrations put in place. All right. So take a look.
Q&As.
Yeah, so what do the numbers actually mean? Is there somewhere we can see how the risk numbers calculate? Yeah, so like I was showing you before, the risk numbers in the executive dashboard, it is based on a 100-point scale, and it is an internal trend number. So we are asking for feedback on that. Do you like this? Do you not like that? Let us know. But it's looking at company-wide and what remediation steps and preventative measures to lower your company risk over time. This is what's helping us decide that. So we're looking at exposure, attack risk, and security configuration risk. So everything that you see across the top. So if I come into exposure, I can see what kind of exposure I have. Again, we've got endpoints in here that aren't running any agent. Attack overview, I can take a look and see what kind of attacks have been launched in my environment. You can see the MITRE techniques here also called out. This is just over the last 30 days, but I can do a custom period and go back further. And then what the cyber threats we've seen, some spam email and a generic attack. This is actually a script that's run in my environment. And I don't have a lot of information here right now, unfortunately, but I can see also what protection layer is being identified. So we've got network, endpoint, and email. So you can break it all out so you're not having to fight down what needs my attention first, right? What needs the most attention, right? All right, the next question here is, our environment has roughly 60,000 Chromebooks. Currently, Trend does not have any visibility on these devices outside of network logs and email detection. Does Trend have a Chrome/web extension plan? We are working on this. We will be adding it to a full MDM solution, typically something like through Microsoft or something like that, where we're added on. You would do your MDM management with that, but our detection capabilities would be added as well. Inside of Vision One right now, we have the mobile security. It will come in here. So yes, it is being worked on. In order to take advantage of Vision One, would all the devices in our organization have to be running this software? For instance, Defender runs on desktops and Cloud Workload Security on backend server. So if you want to continue running Defender on your desktops, you can go ahead and do that. You can deploy the standalone XCS sensor, which stands for XDR endpoint sensor. They come into endpoint inventory, and you can deploy that agent out through the agent installer. It's a sensor that sits on top. It will coexist with that agent so long as you don't have Defender's EDR agent enabled. But we can do that. As of right now, we have no plans to take in EDR sensor data from other organizations. First of all, it would be really hard to get them to communicate with us to allow us to be an XDR vendor competing against them directly with their EDR, but also because we can control our own product better and get updates out and help our customers more comprehensively if we have control over that endpoint software. All right. Could Vision 1 or worry-free XDR be used to perform a penetration test should a company face a requirement for a third-party pen test? So we do have vulnerability assessment built in, but that's not a penetration test. I'm trying to, so we do work with penetration test companies, and as far as that goes, we are working on getting Red Canary connections added in to help our customers, but we're also in talks with Pixis, Attack IQ, right? There's several other pen testing softwares that we're looking at. We do have a couple of tests that are built in to create data, but it is being worked on at least from a Red Canary standpoint right now. Probably more coming soon. All right. And then the last one I see here, how long you keep detection data. So by default, detection data is available for you to view for a month. We do hold it a bit longer than that, but then we do roll it off. If you would like longer retention of data, that can be purchased up to a year. All right. So we got 2 minutes left, so that was right up at the time. Any last minute questions from anyone? Awesome. Thank you all for your time and for spending it with us. I hope you got a lot out of this. If you have any questions, please reach out to your sales team. I'm sure they'll get them back to us, as well as if you're interested in that monthly what's new, please let us know that as well. Sheila, I think we can hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, Tim and David. I really appreciate it. Again, the session is recorded, so you will see a follow-up note with the recording here very shortly. Thanks again, and everybody have a great week.
Thanks all.
Thank you.